Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end of day recap for Thursday, November 7th. Another action-packed day. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only. So where to start with this day? I would say, I always try to kind of give a summary into the day, and I try to give you guys a couple things that really stand out in terms of themes to me that are very important. And then I talk about some of the movers and my trades. I try to give you exactly like what I did for the day and why I did it. So for example, number one theme I think today was really how well growth stocks did today. Yesterday, if you remember, it was the best performing group were the banks. They had this huge gap up, and the small caps had this huge day where they were up 5%. That was not the case today. There wasn't any follow through for the small caps. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. And to me, like where we're seeing one group of stocks do really well one day, like we did yesterday, and another group of stocks do really well today, uh, is I like that kind of market. I like where it's a little bit of, rotation, taking some winners and money going in, sloshing around and going to other places of the market while the overall market is going up. That's kind of my favorite type of market. But, of course, how can you argue with a market that has got this momentum to it and has that much participation? The breadth was strong today. So that was, I think the breadth was better than yesterday because yesterday was also about the interest rate move and a lot of things like utilities and REITs and consumer staples. Those really underperformed, as well as like solar names, for example, right? Were down a lot. So that's why the breadth wasn't, if you were looking for strong breadth or wondering why breadth wasn't strong yesterday, it's because there was a lot of areas that were susceptible to interest rate moves or some of the political type trades like solar, for example, and that's why the breadth wasn't amazing yesterday. But today, pretty good. And if you look at some of the worst performing groups, it was the banks today. They gave back, and again, you have to put things in perspective because the banks were up over 10% yesterday. Another theme that's also kind of a driver of some of these moves is look at what bonds did today. They snapped back quite nicely. Now I think that they were down like 2.5% yesterday, but it's nice to see this come back. So I want to just kind of start with a little bit of macro stuff. I mean, I've already talked for a few minutes. I didn't even mention that we had a Fed meeting today, which kind of just seemed like it took the back seat. They did cut interest rates. Powell's press conference was short. He usually goes for about like 45, 50 minutes. And he was done, or sometimes he goes, sorry, 45 to 55 minutes is how long his press conference was, or on average, because I write these things down. I take it I take mental notes of when Powell is usually done. He's usually done around like 3:20 to 3, anywhere between 3:20 to 3:30. Today he was done at 3:13. So he was short and kind of to the point. He took a lot of political questions he took and kind of thought he did a good job at sidestepping them and staying out of the way. So they cut interest rates. We're now at a target rate of 4.75. The chances of another cut coming December is about 71% of another 25 basis points. So with those odds, that's just like 18 basis points is what's being priced in. So they are pricing in for now the possibility of another cut in December. Do I think that the market is hanging on that right now? I don't. I think that there's other things. These things sometimes go from the front seat to the back seat. But anyway, that's just me. But look at TLT. This was the move yesterday, and look at it climb back. So retracing some of that move. The other thing was the dollar. Look at the move in the dollar yesterday. Was a huge move in the dollar. This is the dollar ETF UUP. And look at it come all the way back down. Why am I paying attention to these things? Because it's a no-no when the dollar and rates like ramp up in a big direction. I was watching Stan Druckenmiller last night, right? He has an interview that I posted on Twitter last night, and he was talking about that. Like he looks at, even though he trades a lot of stocks, and I think the guy trades everything. He trades currencies, obviously, but he looks at these things and says, hey, that's not a good environment when the dollar is, going crazy to the upside. So, one day is not a trend, and that's a knee-jerk reaction and a nice move back. I mean, we're going right back to where we were at the end of October. All right, so that's kind of some of the things that I was watching on the macro side. But SPY is out to new highs, another little gap higher. And we're way above the 5 period moving average. Could we have some type of a check back? Of course we could, because we're getting a little bit extended here in the short term. What's the RSI? The RSI on the 1 hour is about a 76. So yeah, this is getting kind of stretched, right? Um, that's the S&P. I'm going to go through these other indices really quickly. I mean, the Qs have been phenomenal. I mean, the Qs had a phenomenal day today. A lot of really good participation in this in this group today, and I'll break down a couple names. I just want to also go, but that's a clear breakout. Notice how I'm kind of I drew another trend line in here, right? Because that could be the level that you're long against, right? And you just have to keep on ratcheting up your levels and your stop prices and going from there. Now look at IWM. This is a different picture. The thing that I find is very interesting is how much IWM moves on events, economic data, political data. It gaps all over the place. It is very, very tricky for IWM, but that's why you could use options to kind of exploit some of these moves. But I think that for now, being that this blue line has been taken out, that's a virgin point of control, right? And that is coming from all the way back here. It's a logical place for this to digest, right? And you can look at a couple of the other ones. Again, it doesn't mean that price is going to completely get rejected there, but there is overhead supply. So you're going to need new buyers to come in and push this higher. But I think backing and filling is quite normal after that kind of move. All right, so let's talk about, so that's my thought. And I actually put a little bit of a hedge on. I sold some call spreads, right? Because I'm pretty long this market and I've been participating in a lot of the momentum names. And I feel comfortable at this point putting on a little bit of a hedge. And what I decided to do, because we had the event today and I knew like implied volatility would probably drop after the event, I sold some call spreads that expire tomorrow. So as long as we don't have like another gap up day, and I already took a target on that trade. So, but I sold premium because I think that just very short term, right? That trade expires tomorrow. But again, I wanted a little bit of insurance just in case for the Fed meeting. We got to always know where your risks are, right? That's what separates just regular traders who are just chasing price action and risk managers, right? And I try to follow the best, and the best are risk managers. All right. And so what did I trade today? Well, I'm very impressed with this move in Amazon. And, this is a nice breakout. Notice how I've got a trend line in here too, right? It just kind of, it's like a little bit of like training wheels, right? This tells me, hey, I want to be long as long as this breakout is intact, right? So I've taken a couple targets in this trade. If we kind of foot back, like if Bezos comes out and says he wants to sell a whole bunch of more shares, right? I want to leave plenty of room, and I'll add back on that dotted line. Tesla, right? Now this was kind of so here's a good example of buyers have pushed through this VPOC, right? And I really didn't know what to do with this yesterday, and that's fine. There's plenty of other names out there. You don't have to get stuck on one name. If it's not clear to you, if you're not getting a clear signal or you're not really sure what to do, just move on to the next name. You don't have to figure out every name. But I set an alert and I said, hey, well, I would be really interested if this can get over 290, right? And I went long on 290. Notice how I've got a little trend line in here too, right? I'm going to be long versus 290. Now it came in a little bit. I made sure I took a couple targets, but I'm looking for this to get to 308. All right. So that's a trade that I think is very interesting. After hours, I mean, there's, Upstart, I took some profits in, right? This is a trade that I got long the other day. I talked about this in pre-market prep this morning, right? You can see that. Look how it's taken out 2 VPOCs here at 68 bucks, right? So again, it's hitting a little bit of overhead supply, but I'll tell you, this was already a hell of a trade for me because I went long on this pivot day, right in here, around 50 bucks. So that's a nice move, top of value that completed, and now we'll see if we can get the breakout. But I was really attracted to this name because this is AI credit. Now I know AI credit is different than AI insurance, but we already saw Root and we saw um, Lemonade, LMND, go nuts to the to the upside. So when you've got that kind of information, again, they're not the same exact companies, but $20 to 28, really nice move. A couple of these other moves, be interesting what a firm does. Um, it's trying to figure out some direction here. But if you look at some of these movers, like this is happening almost every day where we've got a handful of names. Toast is up 22%, right? 5-9 is up 20%. Bill Holdings is up 15%, right? AXON is just amazing to me. And I didn't even talk about Doximity, which is I think which is up 37%. Just enormous moves to me. And again, setting up for more like upside momentum type names or type moves. This is it's hard not to get excited about a market that's doing things like this. I think it helps to kind of to stay grounded and to look at some of the names that are to the downside, like Sweet Green is down 12%. So again, there are still victims of earnings, like Redfin is down 14%. Zillow had a big day to the upside. You think maybe Redfin might follow, but nah, it didn't do it, right? And again, it's very much if companies are going to execute. I try to stay long some, the last portion of a trade. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I thought Melly would have a good quarter. That's a victim to the downside. But look at this MTSI, right? We watched this name. It looked very good, but I mean, this is so every once in a while you get something like this. And again, I didn't hold my full trade. I took profits on the way up here, right? And that's a really nice candle. Square's one name where we saw put buying, right? And I think Square last I checked was down. Right. And it is. It's down at $70. So this is a pretty good signal. We saw a heck of a put buyer today. Sometimes I don't really like the same day option activity when a name reports earnings, but this was too big to ignore. And it's a pretty decent move to the downside. All right, so I covered. I didn't. How could I get through all this video and I didn't even talk about Bitcoin? I'll cover one more trade that I put on today, but let's look at Bitcoin futures today, which again just gravitating higher. This is nice, and again, like this chart here, right here, looks so good to me. Right, look at the difference here of like up, starting to. So it was in this pattern of lower highs and lower lows, right? And then once it came out of this, so here's the VPOC takeout, right? But look at it kind of hold in here, right? So now the next leg down made a higher low, right? See the difference? These lower lows. Here's the change, right? When it came back and corrected a little bit, it didn't retrace below this previous low. Then it took out this high, right? New high. Look, it takes another bit of a step back, but notice how the lows are getting higher, right? That's a really good signal in my opinion, and why I stayed long the IBIT ETF. I went long the IBIT ETF right in here, and I kind of sat with it and I said, well, let's see if it can hold that 20-day moving average. Did, and I got rewarded for it. Let's go to this MSTR, which made a new high today. Again, little pivot in here after earnings, right? Broke down, came down a little bit, but very shallow dip, right? And same thing, I got long right on the break of the 1 hour value area for the day, right? That was my long. I did this a few weeks ago on a break of a 1 hour value area, and it worked pretty well. Now, I've got to monitor. Again, nothing is assured, right? You don't know what the market's going to do. Nobody has a crystal ball. So as long as it's above 258, I'm in it. But I'll set my I'll ratchet my stop up to my right around my cost basis. And again, I've already taken some targets. I do that like when I'm the first day of a trade, I always take a little bit of profits because you don't know what's going to happen, especially when you go long in the beginning of the day. All right, guys, that is it for today's video. Have a great night. But again, even if we get a little bit of a check back, we are in the strongest period of the year in terms of seasonality, and I like it. And I would think that if we do get a little bit of a dip, that it gets bought, but I would watch for evidence of that, of course. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow.